Nobody 2 is the sequel to the first film that came out in 2021. This movie takes place a little bit after the first movie ended. Hutch Mansell, once again played by Bob Odenkirk, is dealing with some repercussions that came from his actions in the first movie. He owes a big deal of debt to a shadowy organization or group, whatever, so they send him on countless missions. Mission after mission after mission of killing and bloodshed. He needs a break. He's getting a little burnt out, so they're like, all right, sure, take a vacation for a little bit. So he and his family, that's what they do. But unfortunately for Hutch, one thing leads to another. He gets involved in another criminal organization toss-up thing similar to the first movie. I think the first Nobody is decent. I saw that back in 2021 in theaters. It was that weird 2021 time where either vaccines were not out yet or they were just kind of starting to get rolled out. Either way, though, it was a weird little time where people were like being selective about what movies they see in theaters. Some people are just experimenting with what they could go see. This was a little bit before like Godzilla vs. Kong was kind of like the first big movie to get more people back than normal. But that being said, under the circumstances, and especially I think in the years since, it got a bit of a following. It did modestly well in the theaters at the time, enough to warrant a sequel, and here we are now. They do not have the same director this time. For this movie, they have Timo Gianto, who directed The Night Comes For Us, which is a fantastic Netflix action movie. If you have not seen that, I remember watching that and being just blown away several years ago. So I kind of walked in with like this higher expectation of like, man, this better kick ass. Especially since Derek Kolstad, writer of the first John Wick and the first Nobody, he was back writing this time around, as well as a writer who worked on 4 or 5 episodes of season 4 of Jack Ryan with John Krasinski, that show. So, I mean, this one should still be pretty fucking awesome, right? The movie opens up the exact same way as the first Nobody did, and I think I even mentioned it in my review for that film. I'm not a fan of openings that spoil the outcome of the events, I think there's a clever way to go about that, but most time people just like take a scene that just gives away like, oh, is the character gonna make it? Yeah, and then they put it at the start. It's supposed to be like, oh, how did they get involved in this jam? But I always kind of look at it as like, dude, can you just not spoil the experience? I don't want to be thinking about like that scene the entire time, right? And worrying about like, is that the very end? Oh, it is. Yeah, of course he makes it. And they do it again. They do it again this time around. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's the running thing. They got to do that again. And then they did another thing that they have copied from the first movie, which is the monotony montage. In the first movie, it's Bob Odenkirk kind of going about his very boring day. His relationship with his family is a little splintered. I think more so his wife. In that first movie, they do a montage of that monotony. And then this time around, they do another one, but this time it's because he's doing these murder missions and his wife is like, oh, I wish you were still in bed in the morning. Or you're missing your son's game that we're going to mention a couple scenes later, whatever. They do a similar monotony montage that I like the idea of more so than the execution both times around, but more so in this movie because I felt like, even going back to the first movie, it kind of distances yourself from any actual connection to the drama. And I think that was my main critique with like the first movie. I think a lot of it boils down to, look, it's an hour-and-a-half movie. It's told in a very simplistic way. They try to do that John Wick thing, which makes sense because it's the same writer. They try to do that John Wick thing of like, well, you learn more about the guy as it goes on, the world grows a bit. I just don't think they did it as smoothly as the first John Wick did, or as effectively. It always felt like there were certain angles that they weren't pushing hard enough on, certain ways that could have been funnier that they didn't really go all the way in on. But I felt like the simplicity worked more for that movie because that's the origin story of the character to us, the audience. First time we're meeting this guy. So it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I think just the material, it works a little bit better. You can skate by on the just pure entertainment with the simplistic kind of way of storytelling. The thing about sequels is that not everyone wants to see the same exact movie again, you know what I mean? Like, some people want the world to grow, they want characters to change, they want new things, they just want a new experience, but with the same character or characters that we've grown to love. Unfortunately, the first 2 scenes of this movie, as I've just, laid out for you, painted a picture early on of, I'm getting very worried that this is just going to be the same movie, just now they're at a rundown amusement park, and that's essentially kind of what happens. There's an added twist with another character that you think might be a certain way, but then they kind of play on that expectation that I thought was like neat. Like, okay, that's a neat idea. It's a good like parallel as far as like father. But other than that one new idea, yeah, this is essentially the same movie again, just now it's set at a rundown theme park. They have some early on simple like character drama to set up the stage, and then as the movie goes on, they either handle it in a way that's just kind of like borderline hand waving, like, yeah, don't worry about that all too much, or it's just, they don't. You know, there's never like another conversation or any conversations or any like getting connected with the characters, which, like I said about the first movie, I felt like they, in their way, they did a simplistic story. I didn't feel fully attached to the character drama, but you know, it worked for the story that they were telling. This time around, yeah, I was like totally distant from that. I do not care about Hutch's family at all. I don't care about any of like the drama that they try to set up with his wife being concerned that he's working too much now, or his son being like, why can't I punch a dude in the face? You know what I mean? That's like I said about hand waving, like he just kind of overcomes that arc in just a very rushed kind of scene with no extra backing to that, you know? Every character also has a moment though, so even though I'm watching it and I'm going like, I don't know, I like Bob Odenkirk because I like the character from the first movie, and like I like what they're setting up here for him. I love Bob Odenkirk, but everyone else, who cares? But they're trying to give moments to everyone. Every character has like a moment to shine, and it's one of those like very distracting things when you just have too many characters and not enough time to develop all of them or make them interesting, where you're like, dude, I can see this playing out exactly how you want to play it out, and I am not interested in the slightest. I'd rather you not focus on this. Or at the very least, you know, do more to earn that moment earlier on. It's just, I don't think they did, you know? I think also, like, similar to what I was saying about the first movie, it's a funny movie, but there are certain comedic ideas I felt like, and I felt this way upon rewatches as well, they didn't push all the way. Like, there are certain ideas I thought they could have had more fun with, especially with it kind of being a comedic riff on John Wick. In this movie, they once again try to do jokes, but I don't think there was anything funny. There's even like a shot of like the family walking and Bob Odenkirk is saying something that I think was supposed to be funny, like an attempt at a riff, and I was like, what was the joke? Like, what was the delivery on that? Like, did they know what they were doing? But you might be like, Jackson, who cares about character or story or jokes? What about the action? That's what everyone's here for. It's another 87 North production where the action is supposed to be the highlight. And yeah, there are quite a few fun and just very, you know, rated R wild action scene moments in here. Obviously, Timo, you know, he's got a good eye for it. So, you know, that's obvious. I couldn't help but feel like there were a couple times, though, where they were, like, the way they were shooting it, the way they were cutting, it felt like more they were trying to hide certain things more so than just trying to create an experience. And it didn't help that the first, like, couple like seconds of action with Hutch, it looks like the footage is sped up and they keep him like further away from the camera. It's one of those like reveal things, right? And it's like it almost looks like, yeah, they're trying to hide the fact that they couldn't get the actors to move faster. So it feels like they've sped up the foot. At least it looks like it, you know, something felt off. So I couldn't help but like not think about that during other points where the editing felt choppy. And it's not even just to the action, like certain ways scenes move along. Like I said, it's told simplistically, but the editing, it almost seems like they're chopping shit, you know, just to keep it going. And it's like, man, I would just love for this movie to breathe. And I don't think it's breathing, despite the fact that, you know, there's times where they're just at this rundown theme park, just, you know, doing antics. Antics implies that there's like more going on than just them like just saying a lame joke, just saying a really lame line or whatever. But the action's not horrible, it's just I was distracted sometimes. And there's even one sequence that they've set up with like these corrupt cops kind of ambushing Bob Odenkirk, and I felt like the staging of that, like the, you know, writing to get to that point was really dumb and didn't make any sense, and it made the villains just seem lesser than they already were, which was just kind of stock to begin with. Between Sharon Stone and the guy in the first movie, there's kind of no difference, if you ask me. And I did not really care for the overall execution for the first movie's villain either. He was a guy who did bad things, but he would do karaoke, so that was like a funny quirk. And Sharon Stone is in this movie. She's a bad person who does bad things, but she likes to smile and dance to German music. You know, it's like, that's not a character. It's a quirk for a character that's not in this a whole lot. Like I said, not pushing enough of the envelope as far as like the comedy and what you could do with the premise and, you know, trying to tell jokes. And even Colin Hanks, who is a good actor. And look, Sharon Stone is fun as far as like what she's giving for a very limited role. And Colin Hanks, you know, does his job decently enough, but there's just nothing there other than just, like I was saying before, just stock. It's just the surface level. So I wasn't really engaged with any of them. I wasn't like, oh shit, here they are. You know, whenever they popped up, it was just kind of like, let's just move on. We know how this is gonna go. To re-emphasize what I'm saying about like not pushing the envelope further, it seems like, you know, especially with this movie too, instead of trying to play off of certain tropes of like the action movie or the one guy who's got skills you don't know about, instead of like playing around with that, doing something funny, they're just kind of like, I don't know, let's just have it play out. And there are some fun action moments to be had. Sure, like the entire third act, once again, is similar to the first movie. They booby-trapped a place. It's just that this time, instead of a warehouse, it's the run-down amusement park. It's fine enough, you know. I couldn't help but feel like, though, for all this talk of like, because I've heard some things, like, from reviews saying, like, the action's way better this time around. I was like, it does feel like Timo, despite the fact that he definitely had some input as far as like how to shoot it, whatever, it does feel like the reins are being pulled on him so significantly. Like I said, The Night Comes for Us, incredible action movie. Watch that and then watch Nobody 2. It's like, oh yeah, Nobody 2 is so tame. And I know it's because this is like a more studio movie, and once again, they are trying to do comedy, right? They're trying to make a more fun experience, but trying to blend in like the violent action. Don't go too far. Once again, it seems like they're afraid to be great. You know what I mean? It's like they're limiting themselves. Like, all right, we want some jokes, but we don't want too many jokes. We want some insane bloody action, but you know, let's, you know, keep it kind of, you know, tame, as tame as it can be, right? You know, we are still trying to sell this. And I don't know, I just feel like that's kind of a complete betrayal to the idea of this movie. Like, it could have been so much more, and it probably should be. You know, we've had years now of like the John Wick, like knockoffs, or like, you know, people trying to make action movies like John Wick or have similar premise. And I feel like Nobody could have just been the franchise now that, you know, took those and just really made light of it, or just had fun with the tropes more so than trying to be John Wick. And I mean, obviously, when you watch this movie, they are trying to be funny, you know, they are trying to make this more comedic, but it just never rises above the surface for me, you know what I mean? It just feels like diet John Wick. Not even just regular diet John Wick, diet, like just below, you know? Like, God, man, I was really bummed out walking out of this, because like I said, Bob Odenkirk is still good in this movie as Hutch. I like that character. I liked a lot of the potential that the plot, you know, kind of set up, but, you know, when the execution is just not there, when the care is not there to get us to an endpoint that's satisfying, when you're essentially just doing the same exact movie, just different location, like, that's not enough for me, you know what I mean? Like, the movie begins, it proceeds, and then it ends in ways that are just too similar to the first one, where I'm like, what was the point of getting this team back together again? What was the point of telling this story again? I don't think anything. I think they want a bigger success financially, and at that point it's like, okay, well, they had no real pure reasons for wanting to make this movie. No, like, it's for the narrative. It's like, we love these characters, we want to give something back on a thematic level or something like it. It's just like, I don't know, some people like the action, and, you know, we got some money the first time around, let's try again. And I think at that point it really shines through for me, and I just could not care about this movie. I'm gonna give Nobody 2 a C. It's just kind of straight down the middle, you know? It has its moments, it has its bright spots, but then it has these moments where I'm like, I just cannot get engaged. I don't care about these characters, and I thought they were fine the first time around, you know? And if anything, I would have loved to have seen how these characters continue to grow with another one. And it just feels like their hearts were not in it, or maybe an original script exists that just got chopped to bits. It is like almost the exact same runtime as the first movie. Maybe that plays a part in it. They're like, let's just make it as short as possible, get it in as many like time slots in theaters as possible. You know, people talk about movies are too long. Well, what if we give you a short one? And it sure feels like it, because it doesn't feel satisfying narratively in any way, shape, or form. It feels like you're rushing to an end. That's my thing also. A quick tangent as far as like some people saying like make movies short or whatever, like people really championing short movies. And look, I get they have their place, obviously. My thing always is just like, whatever the movie needs to be, cool. Like, if a movie's like 2.5 hours, I'm not just like going in and walking out going like, well, that should have been shorter because I didn't want to sit there for 2.5 hours. It's like, it just depends on the story, depends on what they needed, you know, like, let a movie be whatever length it needs to be. So if part of the reason why this movie feels so rushed and choppy is because there's some studio mandate or the producers or whatever were like, well, people keep saying they want short things, you know, the attention span is getting so terrible now that, you know, we can only keep it at such a long length to keep people engaged. You know, maybe that has nothing to do with it, but considering just how corporate approved this bloody R-rated action movie feels, you know, how it feels so corporate tamed, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the thinking. But if you've seen Nobody 2, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.